In the spirit of keeping things conversational over here, I have printed out a list of requests from the first 50 or so folks that said, add me to this private podcast feed, not really necessarily knowing what you're getting yourselves into, but no names or identifying factors or any of that. But just so you know, I really do take your requests seriously because it's like a conversation. Human design wise, I'm a generator. I always love the way I've phrased it as a mutual inspiration society. So that's why it's so much more fun for me and also so much more natural for me to have conversation going rather than feeling like I need to sit and either write or record something in a total silo. So I'm going to try, even though I am alone on my love seat right now in my room, I am going to try to keep this as conversational as possible, as if you literally just asked me this and you're like sitting on the other side of the love seat with me, which was always my thing with Naptime Empires. I always used to describe that. And it's not over, by the way. Naptime Empires isn't done. It's just that I needed to open up this faucet over here. That's another way to talk without needing the fancy microphone and stuff. But I always described that as like it was leaving a long boxer message. And sometimes I would even say stuff like, remind me to tell you blah, blah, blah. But I really do mean it. Like I said, please click that link and share your thoughts anytime as you're listening to any of these messages, because I'm not kidding that I want it to be conversational, like real human conversational. But this is also just a way for me to reach you and a number of other people that I would love to be in real conversation with and see where things go in this lifetime. Okay, so you know who you are. As I read this, thank you for sharing this conversation topic, and I would love to hear what you think. Okay, the request was trying new things that you know you won't do perfectly and need the courage to risk making mistakes. I'm doing lots of new things this year that I feel air quotes qualified to do, but I know I'm growing so much that next year I'll look back and see some amateur mistakes, but I have to keep moving forward and make them to grow. Catch 22. I totally hear you. And I kind of talked about this actually in my first message, which is like I could be saying something in one of these messages and then 3 weeks later, I could disagree with it, or I could be like, oh my gosh, that was silly. That wasn't a great idea. I should have done XYZ, blah, blah, blah. There's always going to be things that we can look back on, but that's kind of the point of life, right? It's like we're here to learn, we're here to grow, and we will always be learning and growing. Even if we didn't want to, honestly, I feel like that's just part of life and human nature and literal personal development and everything. But also you know who you are, and we have a lot in common. And I think we're a bit nerdy by nature. So we especially are going to be learning and growing because we're actually seeking that out. And so just the nature of the question, I believe, is courageous because you're doing things, you're doing new things, and you're choosing to grow, and you're even considering this path of intentionally putting yourself out there to like F things up a little bit. But the other thought that I have around it is that we can't mess things up. I just kind of feel like we can't mess things up the way that I think about it, and not in like a Pollyanna or a bypassy kind of way, but I feel like we can always learn something. So even if I'm trying to think of a specific mistake or whatever. I mean, there's little mistakes like, okay, a typo went out or something like that, or a repeat email or a broken link. You know, there's like simple logistical things like that that are mistakes, which is just human on one hand. And so many people appreciate that. I mean, I feel like, to use the overused phrase, now more than ever, but I do feel like there's a swing towards, okay, let's just stop pretending. Can we all just stop pretending? Can we all just stop pretending like we know everything, like that everything is like rainbows and butterflies and that we have it all figured out? And, you know, I think people are looking for sincerity and texture and nuance and owning our messiness too. And there are both sides of it, because there is a lot of awesome, glossy, okay, really cool, shiny, highlight, real, REEL kinds of things too. And I do think that also people can swing to the other side of the spectrum where then they feel afraid to own the light, you know, Marianne Williamson quote style about the greatest fear about owning our light and blah, blah, blah. So I think that can be taken too far where it's like, all I do is make mistakes and I'm just such a mess. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily real either. So the truth is both sides. But I would say just think about who you love to connect with, not even just online, but like in your real life, your real friends and family, and the people that you love and trust the most. And like they're willing to make mistakes and also learn from them and then just keep going. And think about the people who have maybe achieved some things that you feel called to do as well in your life, and think about how many things that they've done and been willing to fall to be able to get back up and go for it, to be in that position. Basically, I have a Naptime Empires episode called The Difference Between You and Them. And it's an intentionally like polarizing title because it's when we're stuck in on the sidelines, like we're trying to jump in at just the perfect time in the game of double dutch. I'm going to mix all kinds of metaphors here, so thanks. Just deal with it. But the whole point is like the difference is that they just made a choice, like they just went for it. Like my girlfriends and I were at this spa in Cancun called, or it's a hotel, a resort and spa in Cancun called Nisuk in 2019. It's so amazing. It's one of the most beautiful places and one of the coolest, most lovely spa experiences that I've ever done. But there was like this whole multi-sequence water experience where there's like the sauna and the shower, and then there's this and that, and then there's like the cold plunge. And it's kind of like that with the cold plunge. It's like at some point you just got to go, like you just got to go. It's ice cold water or whatever. And again, I'm not saying do this, talk to your medical professional or whatever. I'm talking metaphorically here. But it's like at some point you just got to go in. That's the only difference between the people who are already in the ice pool and you standing on the sidelines overthinking it. Or like whenever we were jumping off of a little cliff last summer in Austin, like we rented a lake house as a big old family, and it's just like, okay, we're standing there, we're walking up and looking over the edge, and we're stepping back. As long as we know that it's actually like, it's deep enough, like that's an important thing. There are certain, so that I guess that's the thing, right? There are certain things, sure, to make sure that you have in place to a degree, right? But like, okay, we know that the water's deep enough that technically this is safe. We've asked the homeowners, they've told us their best practices, like we've done our due diligence. But once you've done your due diligence, if you're just standing on the edge, psyching yourself out, consider that is actually more uncomfortable than taking the action and taking the risk and being willing to jump off the edge and get a wedgie. Or like for your top to fall off or something. So those are my thoughts on making the mistakes. Because on one hand, it's inevitable, it's going to happen. But then on the other hand, what's a mistake? Like philosophically, what is a mistake? How could you possibly not learn from it and grow from it, and then like Pac-Man style, eat it, take it, and learn from it and grow from it? So in that sense, can you ever really make a mistake? Again, yes. Okay, fine. Let's be literal about taking a test or an exam, and you made this mistake on the math problem and then everything else, went to ish from there. Sure, technically that's possible. But in the kind of creative work and pursuits that you're talking about and that we have experience with, and I know that you do already have experience with, it's like, it's just about trusting yourself to handle it and to learn and grow from it. It's inevitable. It's endearing. We like knowing that we're not the only ones who are overthinking or, making an awkward mistake or tripping, even if nobody sees it or whatever. Like we like humanity because we're human. So we're doing those things. We're being goofy. We're saying the air quotes wrong thing or whatever. But again, every single one of those air quotes mistakes is something that we learned from, ideally. And I'm saying that because I do feel like you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't have that mindset where you're gonna freaking learn from it. You just are, because it's just part of who you are. Am I right or am I right? Let me know. Go to the link and talk back to me. This is a conversation. I can see you. Why do you think I made a private podcast? So that I can see if you're actually listening. And if you're listening, I would love for you to be talking back to me, because I really genuinely would love for this to be a conversation. So if that sparks anything for you, if it clarifies something for you or makes you think about something differently, or it makes you think of another question. Again, it's not like I have all the answers. I just have my answers and my perspective and my weird metaphors from where I sit over here. But just know, I think you're a BA who has so much to offer to the world, sure, but like most importantly to yourself. And it goes back to this question of the comfort zone, right? And the fear of making the mistake. And it's actually so uncomfortable to be in that, on the edge, just about to make the jump, but just thinking about all the things that could go wrong. As long as you've done your due diligence, whatever that looks like, once you've done it, if you know that really you just want to know what the experience is like on the other side, then I would lovingly like to just say, go for it and see what happens. And then once you do it, anchor that in so that you can be like, oh my gosh, that was scary as F, but wow, what a thrill. I did it. And look, I'm still here. Okay, those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll catch you next time. Okay, technically that was the end of the episode, but since you're still here, one, I'd love to thank you for spending part of your day with me, and two, I'd love to ask you if you would take 30 seconds, maybe 60, to leave a rating and review in your podcast app before you tap out today. If you've already done that, it's amazing. Please send me a screenshot so I can thank you personally, and know that sharing this episode with a friend has the same magical powers, and I deeply appreciate both. Also, in case you're listening to the end to see if I ever actually introduce myself, hi! My name is Nikki Elledge Brown. I'm the host and author of Naptime Empires and this here On Her Terms podcast. You can find me around the internet at Nikki Elledge Brown in most places, but what you may appreciate most is actually over at onherterms.com. It's what I call the insider library. It's where you can get inside scoop, first listen rights, email updates every time there's a new episode, and then special insider only bonus content. It's all over in our private feed. Okay, that's a wrap for real. I'll meet you in the next episode.